Hello and welcome. It is another rousing edition of the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast. I'm Matt Michaels. Hello to Brad Tregnago.
Hello to you, sir. For those of you who are just listening to the podcast, Matt looks very spiffy. He's got the polo and the khaki pants, and he's, just entering his season. And I, just got back from a flight like 8 hours ago overnight, and I'm wearing sweatpants underneath the table here. So that's kind of where we're at in our various stages of the season as we cross over.
That's a heavy reveal. Is that meant to suggest that I am not yet comfortable in my season and you have been riding the groove in your seat for some time?
It's more of a freshness deal, right? Like you're still just a handful of games in, it's like, oh man, there's so much still ahead of us. We're still, however many weeks you're away from SEC action, and meanwhile I'm on the back end about to head into the conference tournament and a little bit sleepy. I'm still very grateful and enthusiastic for the games that are coming in women's basketball, but also won't be opposed to some weekends off.
I can understand that. Hey, schedule changes give me a Sunday off this weekend, and we'll talk about it as we go throughout the podcast. And I don't mind having a Sunday off now and again. I mind the doubleheader a little bit, but I don't when it's going to be so nice. And again, all of that stuff with the diamonds and hoops and all the rest of it coming your way. But first, a reminder about our friends at Shelter Insurance who power the podcast. Shelter is ranked number one in customer satisfaction for auto insurance in the Central region by J.D. Power 7 of the last 8 years. We're your shield. We're your shelter. First things first, and this can maybe even turn into a bit of a debate if you wanted to. Mizzou men's basketball gets its win at home over Tennessee, another quad one victory, another victory in the Southeastern Conference to get them to 19 league wins. For you and I, who have been saying all season long, we think that 20 wins overall would get you to the number you need, which is 10 in the league, and 20 overall or better should get you into the big dance. When I was watching that Missouri team play against Tennessee and play defense against Tennessee and play the type of game that Tennessee wants to and usually wins and outdo them at that game, I thought during the contest it could be slim pickings and heart palpitations if Missouri didn't win the rest of the way. But I left that game feeling like they were a men's basketball tournament team, even if by the skin of their teeth after that night. That's how well they played. That's how good they looked. That's how good they looked with really having, Brad, 2.5 scores. T.O. Barrett's career night, Mark Mitchell with a Mark Mitchell-like 20-plus, and Ant Robinson adding 8, and then just some fill-in everywhere else. That's not a game that they would have won 2 months ago, but it's a game they can win now, and it's a game that you might have to play when it comes to March Madness. I think, for me, they've done enough. And I know someone will say that I jinxed it here and things can happen. I get that. But I just don't see worlds at which the team we see now isn't worthy of inclusion to the field of 68.
Well, to add to your point there, it can be instructive to kind of take a step back and look at some mock NCAA tournament brackets from people who follow this stuff regularly and are guessing at the 68 teams in the field. So if you go to ESPN's mock bracket, and Joe Lunardi's been doing it forever, for Mizzou is solidly in the field according to his mock bracket as a 10 seed. But something else that stood out to me, that Indiana is still in the field. And in case you haven't been following Indiana basketball, totally understandable, they just lost at home to Northwestern, a not very good Northwestern team. And I think that's a good perspective to be, because I saw that score and I'm like, oh man, Indiana's toast. And Indiana's not toast, because by rule, 68 teams have to get into this tournament, right? You're going to have to find them somewhere. And so, and Indiana and so many of these other teams on the bubble are not going to have the quality wins that Mizzou is going to have on their resume. And Mizzou is pretty much guaranteed at this point, because they're playing all SEC teams the rest of the way. They're not going to have a bad loss either. So I would agree with you that it's very possible that Mizzou has put enough hay in the barn to get into the NCAA tournament. Now, with that said, it's not just about getting into the big dance, right? You want to, ideally you'd avoid that play-in round in Dayton. give yourself a little better opportunity to make a deeper run. There is an NCAA tournament regional in St. Louis. Ideally, you try and put yourself in a spot where maybe you could sneak over to that region. But yeah, that win against Tennessee was just so impressive. You get down 12-2 pretty much right away against a nationally ranked team, a well-coached team, a really good men's basketball program.
And they looked flat as a pancake coming out against that 10-point deficit early on. I mean, really, there wasn't anything going on for the Tigers to start the first 4 minutes of that game.
Yeah, and to still able to find a way and to do it with, more physicality. I mean, T.O. Barrett was just more physical than Mark Mitchell. And you can listen to the replay of Tiger Talk from this week. And David Dickey Nutt, Mizzou assistant coach, said that T.O. Barrett came over to the bench at one point and said, hey, this guy can't guard me. Mm-hmm. And Dennis Gates was like, all right, go do it. And by golly, T.O. Barrett did it for about 3/4 of that game. He was tremendous, and what a spark he's provided. What a spark Trent Burns has provided the last handful of games. He's really turned himself into a very useful rotation piece down low. 7'5" with 4 steals. He had terrific hands on a couple of those steals, too. Those weren't just gifts that were given to him. He stuck a hand in there and made a play. 7 rebounds, utilizing his size. I mean, this team is just, in a lot of different aspects, this team appears to be rounding into a really good form.
I think that Burns especially has embraced his potential, and Coach Nutt revealed to us on the wrap-up show after that 4-point win over Tennessee, 73-69 in case you haven't heard the score by now. He said that some time ago, several weeks ago, Coach Gates and Trent Burns had a heart-to-heart. He had a conversation with him, and he said, man, it's now or it's never. Like, for you to grow into the type of player that you can be, it has to start right now. Otherwise, it might not be happening for you. There are places that, Missouri needs to go to win ball games, right? But they've gone to Burns, and he really has embraced the defensive part of what he does. I can't tell you how many times a Tennessee player drove to the lane, saw Burns on rotation, and thought twice about what they were going to do. And if you just take away shots in that form by being so large and so present underneath the rim, I even recall a shot where the big man for Tennessee, it might have been Okpara, but it might have been one of the others, might have been Carey, was like in an 8-foot teardrop area, and Burns was still like relatively underneath the basket and did not come out to hedge it, and he hit the little teardrop, and I thought to myself, that's fine. I'd much rather have that given up and have to adjust to that with the big man's defense than have someone just drive past a guard and get to the rim all night long. And Tennessee could not do that. And because they could not do that, I think Missouri took away part of the manner in which they want to play. Gillespie was dynamite in terms of the shots he made, but he did it on very high volume. You made the Volunteers inefficient while you were more efficient and scored more than 1.5 points per trip in the second half. That's going to be a recipe for success that is different than some previous Dennis Gates teams that made the tournament, but maybe, Brad, one with a little bit more staying power. We hear that defense travels, and Missouri's going to have to hang their hat on that if they want to have success, not just at the end of this regular season to improve their seed, which I think they could still end up on the top line in the big dance before this is all said and done as an 8 or above. But to survive in advance, some days you're going to have to win lower-scoring games like the Tigers just did against the Volunteers.
And a game, too, where Mizzou did a really good job taking care of the ball and forced turnovers. So going back to what you were saying about defense, to force 15 turnovers against a veteran group like that and to only have 8 turnovers yourself, I think that's a huge positive. When you've got when T.O. Barrett and Anthony Robinson are both on the floor and they're both playing well, it's going to be really tough for any backcourt in the country to be able to successfully initiate their offense because they can both be so disruptive. And again, I keep going back to it, but 7'5" Trent Burns had 4 steals.
Yeah,
so you've got him
and
on the
important
back end.
Ones late too.
Yeah, and so he's adjusting, like you said, he's adjusting a bunch of shots just because he's very tall, and he's also generating turnovers, just being able to reach in the cookie jar and take the balls away. So it's really it's turning into a really interesting group. It's not. I don't think it certainly is not the way I envisioned it in the preseason, where it's T.O. Barrett who's the lead guard with Robinson coming off the bench. You're getting these types of contributions from Burns. Jaden Stone has didn't have a great game against Tennessee, but he's been terrific all year long. I mean, it's rounding into a really interesting group. I think Coach Gates and his staff deserve a lot of credit for making some tweaks along the way, and it really feels like they're playing some of their best basketball at the right time.
Stone and Pierce from beyond the arc combined for 2 of 9. Stone and Pierce in the game together combined for 2 of 12 for 6 total points. Neither of them got to the foul line. If you had said a month ago that that was the line for those 2 players against Tennessee, you would have pegged Missouri for a 15-point loss. Right?
Well, and add in that Mizzou was minus 12 in rebounding. Really struggled in rebounding. So you pile that on, and that's at least a 15-point loss.
Right. But they didn't lose the game. In fact, they controlled much of the game in the second half. Why? Because the depth of this team that we saw on paper, that Coach Gates had been talking about, it is now finally rounding into form. And you may not be able to rely every night on it being T.O. Barrett. The only person I think you can rely on every night it being is Mark Mitchell, because that guy, again, as Coach Nutt says all the time to you and I, we take him for granted. But another 23-point performance on 8 of 13 shooting. He got everything he wanted. He makes difficult shots at the rim. If you can count on that and then build in 3 guys around it on any night in terms of supplemental scoring, there's a lot of teams you're going to have a chance to beat, and there are not many teams you won't have a chance of beating that night unless they can shoot the lights out of it. And that's, if Missouri is set up in that place, I'd much rather they be in that place to give themselves an opportunity to win every game than to say it has to be some finely tuned machine where you only have this, and this. And if you do all these three things, you win every time. And when you don't, you lose every time. I don't feel that way about this team. It's a little bit more dynamic than that.
I agree with you. There's a lot of different ways it feels like this team can win. And, kind of spinning this forward, if Mizzou can continue to not necessarily win them all the rest of the way, they've got 3 more regular season games left. But if they can, get 1 or 2 at least, it looks like anyway, and the SEC standings are pretty jumbled up here, but Mizzou has a lot of tiebreakers. So as we're talking heading into the weekend, Mizzou's in a 4-way tie for 5th in the league standings with Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, and Kentucky. Mizzou has the tiebreaker on every single one of those teams, so they would be 5th in the conference standings. They've still got an outside shot if they close strong of a double bye even and a top 4 finish in the conference standings. I mean, they have positioned themselves well, not just in terms of, the fact that, with tiebreakers, they're probably going to win them with most of the tiebreakers that are going to come up, but also, obviously, more importantly, in the eyes of the NCAA tournament committee, they have banked, again, Vanderbilt, A&M, Kentucky, Tennessee now. Florida's probably going to win the league in the regular season. You've got to win against them. I mean, there are just so many quality victories that Mizzou has been able to stack up in January and February. I think that it more than makes up for not doing as much work in non-con.
Yeah. Now, let's be honest. Can this whole outlook change if you lose a game and look bad doing it? Maybe it does, right? Like, we have a positive outlook now because the Tigers have been hot. They go to the Hump, a place where historically some Missouri teams have struggled to play. We know about the tandem of Epps and Hubbard because the 2 of those combined for 55 points on their own in Columbia, although the final score of that game way back when was 84-79 and not particularly that close. There was a late shot that was significant to some in that game that went down for Mississippi State, and I'll leave it at that. You look at the way this team is playing now and say, if they can do an all-around defensive job and make the rest of Mississippi State inefficient, then if you hold guys like Hubbard to his 7 of 20 field goal shooting here in Columbia, or even Epps to 9 of 20, which isn't a bad night, it's about 50%. Like, if you hold those guys down off their averages just a little bit, I think you'll be okay. But you need to be prepared for anything, or maybe anyone to step up, and you would like to see one of Pierce or Stone contribute early in the contest to give you a little bit more cushion. I feel that Missouri is the better team right now. The records would suggest Missouri is the better team. Previous action would, but that doesn't mean you can't lose a game on the road in the SEC. You can lose any of them.
Well, especially Hubbard. That's a guy who has gone for 40-plus in a league game at a different point this season. You're right. Mizzou did a really good job of containing Hubbard and making him inefficient. in the first meeting in Columbia. You've got, both T.O. Barrett and Anthony Robinson, very good defensive guards. So you've got some different bodies that you can throw at him and hopefully make him inefficient again. He's going to get his points. I'm almost certain of that. But if you can make it like a 7 of 20 instead of a 12 of 20, then I think you put yourself overall in a great spot to get that 10th SEC win.
Yeah, and like we've been saying, 20 wins overall, 10 SEC wins. We both still agree, and maybe even more strongly now, we think that's enough. We think you've punched your ticket in some form to the big dance if you get it done.
Oh, absolutely, and especially with all the wins that Mizzou now has against likely NCAA tournament teams, I'm pretty sure you're good.
Against the top 15, they've played a lot of games against the top 15 or 16. Like, amongst those top 4 seed lines, you're going to see a bunch of names that Missouri has not only played, but several that they have beaten when we get to March.
Right, and, their net ranking isn't that pretty, but keep in mind that's only one metric that the committee looks at, and they're looking at a whole bunch of them. And also, as Mizzou continues to play SEC competition, the strength of schedule piece that kind of factors into the net is going to keep pushing them up, even if they have a loss or two down the stretch. So I think that Mizzou's in a good position, too.
The strength of schedule factors into wins over bubble as well, and basically that's saying, what would the bubbliest bubble team do against your schedule, and how did you perform relative to that? Missouri's in the top 40 of that metric as we speak right now. Since they've advanced wins over bubble as a metric to the committee, no team that's finished in the top 40 has missed the dance.
There you go.
Put it right there,
out
in front of you. So
lock it in.
It is all there. I won't say lock it in. You did. There's still work to do, but we feel really good here at the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast. Brad and I do. We don't speak for others, and we don't believe in jinxes, or at least I don't. Brad might. I don't know. I'll say this for Mizzou women's basketball. The stretch that you knew you had at the end of the season would always be daunting. It is always daunting to go to Columbia, South Carolina. You can maybe take some silver lining spots out of it, but, I mean, the final score is 112-71. You wish it could be better. I am understanding of the fact that as beat up in an injury sense as Missouri is, you feel like you're playing with one hand tied behind your back when you go to South Carolina. And the Gamecocks, they shot 52%. You did hold them to a poor average three-point shooting, but it still is just a matter of they can create so much havoc against you that it's awfully tough to come out on top in a game like that.
South Carolina has not lost at home in literally 2 years. It's been more than 2 years since they've lost at home. I mean, they're tremendous anywhere, but they're especially good at home, and they had about 18,000 fans there again. They lead the nation in terms of attendance in women's basketball, and for good reason. They're really good again. They're on track to make their 6th consecutive Final Four. I mean, it's the premier program in the SEC in women's basketball right now, and it has been for the last several seasons. And, Mizzou did have some positives come out of there, like you mentioned. Actually, props to Toby Lau, who helps out on the media side for Mizzou women's basketball. He did this digging for me, but Mizzou scored 31 points in the third quarter against a South Carolina team that leads the nation in field goal percentage defense. 31 points in the third quarter. The most points South Carolina has given up in a quarter since December of 2018, and that was against Baylor. So so There was certainly some good stretches there, but the first quarter and the fourth quarter were really rough. South Carolina's a terrific team. Mizzou, you mentioned the injuries. Jordana Reisma has missed the last couple of games and now 5 of the last 6 with a lower body issue. Really Mizzou's only active post player, so they had no post players going up against an enormous South Carolina team that starts 6'6" and 6'3" and brings 6'4" and 6'7" off the bench. So a lot of challenges there in terms of matchups. Reisma was out. 3 Mizzou players have been out for the entire season. 3 others have missed 4 or more games now. And Abby Schreck, who has played and started every game, she hobbled off in the fourth quarter, so hopefully she'll be good to go for the regular season finale on Sunday against another top 10 team in Oklahoma. That's still to be determined on that. But, yeah, it's been a ridiculous year in terms of injuries. When you think of it from that perspective, I think it's important to keep in mind that this team has more overall wins and more conference wins than last year's team. They're going to finish with a record at least 500, so they've got some postseason opportunities coming up in a few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, congratulations to Grace Slaughter. 21 points to lead her team. She moves up the all-time scoring list just a little bit more, now 13th on Missouri's all-time points list. She passed Morgan I. Keisha Bonds and Erica Fields on the way, and on the way to more, and really, through a tough stretch of basketball for Grace Slaughter to continue her excellence shows the quality of player that she is. And I know it's a 2-round event. It probably should be more, but I think the W should be looking hard at Grace Slaughter when it comes time for this season, or hopefully beyond this season, to end for her, because I hope she finishes all 4 years as a Tiger.
Well, the way she's progressing every year, if she takes another step, I mean, she's at 19 points and 7 rebounds a game right now. And if she's able to get to a level, I mean, gosh, after that, where are you at? 22 and 10 while shooting 40% from three? I mean, absolutely, she has that potential, and she's not on pace really right now to make a run at Sophie Cunningham's all-time scoring record if she does, stick around for her senior year, which we're assuming she will. But she does have a real chance to be the 5th Tiger ever on the women's side to score at least 2,000 career points. She's had a heck of a run, and hopefully there's a little bit of a postseason taste coming up this season, and then next year let's see how it looks, and hopefully Mizzou's in the NCAA tournament conversation 12 months from now.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a rundown of hoops such as they stand. Spring football has begun. The Diamonds have begun. Mizzou wrestling knows their allocations and where they need to place at Big 12s in Tulsa. So a lot still to talk about, and we will. But first, a word for you from our friends at Shelter Insurance.
This episode of Mizzou Storytellers on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast is brought to you by Shelter Insurance. Ranked number 1 in customer satisfaction for auto insurance in the Central Region by J.D. Power 5 out of the last 6 years. We're your shield. We're your shelter.
And the podcast is also powered by Socket. Socket Fiber is now available. The fastest, most reliable internet combined with local service and simple billing. Contact Socket today. They have voice data and internet services for your home and business. 1-800-SOCKET3 or visit socket.net.
Faster than local media can ask Eli Drinkwitz about his quarterback situation during a spring press conference. Socket Fiber.
Yes, that happened on Thursday, and the practices for spring have happened on Friday. Eli Drinkwitz keeping with tradition that he wants to start these things in February and get all his players out, hopefully by about spring break-ish. There's going to be a quarterback competition is maybe the number one thing that came out of all this. I think it's well known that Austin Simmons has transferred in from Ole Miss and is a wonderful talent, was set to be the Rebels starting quarterback before he got injured and some guy named Chambliss took the job from him. With that being said, you have Matt Zollers, who got a lot of experience in real time last year and at times performed very well. You have a fresh face in Gavin Sidwar, who will be coming in from the Keystone State, and others who will all be together in a competition. I think that Eli Drinkwitz has handled spring in the macro sense, in the big picture, Brad, about as well as any coach in the SEC, because he wants to have team continuity, right? And you're going to hurt some people's feelings if you go about saying, well, you have the job and you don't. In some places you can, but he's made especially his most important positions every single spring open competitions. If you're able to win the job, which is the right way to do it from a holistic team talent standpoint. It's the right way to do it from building a competition standpoint, and I think it's the right way to do it to give everyone on the roster a chance standpoint. Don't feel that you have preconceived notions outside of a couple of maybe individual spots about what your team's going to be, because really at this point of the season, you don't know. And I think Coach Drinkwitz is one of the people who's smart enough to know that something could reveal itself to him that he and his staff did not foresee over these next several months.
Drinkwitz said in the press conference on Thursday, these are themes he's said before, but it's about individual player development, laying the foundation for the schemes and developing team toughness. That's what spring practice is about for him. We're still several months away from kicking this thing off, although we are 2 days closer than we were the last time we talked on the podcast. They did make that announcement official. We can touch on later, I'm sure. But, going back to that conversation, that competition conversation, somebody asked him about Josh Atkins, who is coming in. He was an offensive tackle and a starter for Arizona State. He played at left tackle. Mizzou's got a pretty good left tackle coming back in Caden Green, and Drinkwitz did say, he'll move over to the right side, but he's going to be competing with Logan Reichert, and he rattled off some others. I mean, no job is a given at this point in terms of what's on Mizzou's roster.
Right, and we understand the real world prospects of bringing someone into a spot and thinking, okay, this person could be the starter in the first game. But I think the way that Drink looks at it, and I'm pretty sure the way he communicates it with his players, because we don't really hear any of them barking about it after the fact, to be quite honest, is, listen, you're here to be a part of a competition. And I see you maybe being someone who could win that competition, but you still have to do it. You have to earn it, and the team together has to move forward. And I think in some places it's a little bit different than that. And I really appreciate the way that Eli Drinkwitz handles all this stuff. One change we did find out that he made from a season ago was that in assessing the last year's team, he felt he did not assign leadership roles quickly enough. So he's named some team captains for the upcoming season. And, you mentioned Caden Green. Pretty obvious. If he's a team captain the season before, he'd be a team captain the next year. But, without having to rattle off every single name, the fact that is a consideration and an area in which he thinks the overall holistic full year arc can improve. He's taking a look and being willing to change when things need to change, and that's a shakeup from a year ago.
Yeah, I think the most newsworthy item that came out of Thursday's press conference is that Ahmad Hardy has another horse.
That's true.
So he's up to 4 in the stable. So congratulations to Ahmad. By the way, women's basketball head coach Kelly Harper also a fan of horses. So we got to get them to get, when they both hit the off season, we got to get something going on. They can compete in dressage or something. I don't know what it is, but we got to.
Well, do we know what both? I think that Ahmad, like he would on the field, I think he wants his horses for speed. So if Coach Harper is into speed and thoroughbreds, then we can just have an old-fashioned race.
So I asked Kelly Harper about this Thursday night after the game. This was off air. This was obviously not like right in the middle of the game. But she said, all right. She said if it's roping, if there's roping involved, then she's going to have trouble. But if it's racing, she's in. I think so. We gotta let's line this up. Let's go over to Churchill Downs or something, and let's.
I was going to say we might have to go to a place that is more equipped for this, or we're going to have some emergency acts of the state legislature here in Missouri if we want to do it on home turf.
We could do it. This could be for entertainment purposes only. It doesn't necessarily have to be for that aspect of it.
Who knows? The fact that you have two big-time horse lovers and they both appeared to enjoy a little bit of speed.
Well, they both clearly know how to compete.
We've got open spaces here in mid-Missouri. You never know.
Yeah, could be
a burgeoning industry right under our noses, and we never knew it.
Yeah, could be some pretty interesting stuff coming up in the offseason. I definitely want to be there. Give me my biggest, silliest hat and a mint julep, and show me where
Straw
that is,
hat.
and I'll be there.
Yeah,
yep.
you'll be a dandy to be sure on that day. And you did mention that it is 2 days closer to the opener of the season. Mizzou Athletics announced that their opener with Arkansas Pine Bluff is moved up 2 days, so it'll be a Thursday night special. There's no reason not to at this point. I think that the television folks appreciate it. The game will be on SEC Network. I think if Missouri had themselves one day at home, a marquee matchup, someone who really puts on the test, I think that the folks who do TV would love to have that sort of content on a Thursday to open things. Just thinking about days down the road. If Missouri wants to own that day, and at least in the Southeastern Conference, have it be, hey, Missouri's going to open the season on a Thursday, and have that be something people get used to, that's all the better. And I think the fans around here really love it too. So I give kudos to athletics and to the TV partners and everybody for coming together to make that truly a tradition now on Labor Day weekend for the Black and Gold.
It's more exposure for the program, like you mentioned. It gives you a couple more days rest before you have to hit the road to play that school to the west
this year.
In week 2. It gives you a chance to play. You're definitely going to play at night because it's on a Thursday, and it can be still pretty hot in mid-Missouri in early September. So the weather is more accommodating to fans. It's also more accommodating, I would argue, to fans because you're waiting. You're doing it before Labor Day weekend gets in full force, and folks have other things that they like to do sometimes on Labor Day weekend. So you're avoiding that weekend. I just think it makes a lot of sense in a lot of different ways, and I was glad to see that announcement too.
Yes, very much. So we look forward to all of that, and look forward to see how camp progresses for Coach Drink and company. We'll offer our updates and our commentary and our horse racing picks as we go along here on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast.
So I'll need to know the names of all the horses because that's my primary research and my primary strategy in terms of picking a winner.
You don't even want to go there because you don't remember my previous life as a radio host in which I had a segment designed solely to determine what the name of a horse was based upon the name of its mother and its father,
Yeah.
who I will not announce here because I feel like it's restricted and reserved. But if we ever got to horse racing on the podcast, the game would be afoot.
Want to be respectful of our friends at our flagship station, KTGR, for sure.
Hey, it's my invention. I use it whenever I want. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on. The Diamonds, Mizzou softball back in town, and home openers abound here at the Mizzou Invitational. It's good to see the Tigers back, really, from a road that has been a little bit unkind to them. They've had some close defeats. They get a chance for cracks at Wichita State and Drake and Miami of Ohio scheduled over the course of this weekend, and a chance to just feel comfortable again. You know, I think that I think Coach Anderson and company know that their work is cut out for them because they struggled these first few weekends. The great part of it is if you're in the Southeastern Conference and you get your work done, every series you win is a super regional series that you won. And if you win a few of those, all of a sudden you're in a much different spot than you are kind of licking your wounds coming back from the road. So you have to give everything an opportunity to gel. You'll get great opportunities against the best competition in the country. You would like to see it start, though, with a very strong weekend in your home openers.
Yep, got to get those vibes in a better place. Just off to a challenging start. Games against Wichita State, Miami of Ohio, and Drake Friday through Sunday morning at home for now. Understand that there's some weather events that might be moving into the area on Sunday, so keep an eye on the social media, and there might be. We'll see if that schedule ends up holding up, because we know that baseball, for example, has already made some changes to their weekend schedule.
Yeah, they have. They were scheduled for a Sunday getaway against North Dakota State, but it's going to be so darn nice on Saturday. There's no reason not to play two games. I mean, the weather forecast for Sunday is a bit challenging. So they play Friday night at 6. They'll have a usual Friday night at 6 unless television has something to say about it throughout the rest of the season when they're at home. And then they'll play 2 starting at 1 p.m. on Saturday. That's an earlier start time than the 4 p.m. that had been scheduled for the single game. So they'll get to set stuff up with the Bison. It's going to be awesome weather no matter which diamond you go out to. Friday might be a little bit late by the time you hear this, but Saturday, if you hear this before Saturday, go to a Diamond Sports game in Columbia. And I think specifically as it pertains to Mizzou baseball, they have a real chance against a team that made the NCAA tournament last season by winning their league. And oh, by the way, had the pleasure of in an elimination game knocking off some team to the west, the Kansas Jayhawks, and eliminating them in a 4-3 matchup. Their Friday night guy is someone who was a freshman All-American a couple of seasons ago. They have some talent. The Bison are struggling to hit right now for average as a team. And what's one thing Missouri's doing very well, especially for their starting pitching? The opponent's batting average is way down. The starter's ERA is great. 9 games played, and in all 9 games, Missouri's starter has pitched deep enough in the game to have qualified for the victory. The Tiger starters are 6-0. They've each pitched at least 5 innings in a start. That's rare. In baseball proper, much less modern college baseball, where you see a lot more mix and match, especially on Sundays, where I think Brady Kellenbrink's done really well. Saturday is Josh McDevitt's day, and it's almost like I don't want to look anywhere else and wake up from the dream, because the dream is to have Pimentel, McDevitt, Kellenbrink, unless somebody usurps them by being better, all throughout the course of the season, hold down those jobs and be regulars on the rotation in the weekend. I can't tell you the last time that happened for Mizzou baseball and what a difference it's making overall in giving the team a footing in these games to do the things they've done offensively, which, by the way, they scored their 100th run in a run rule victory on Tuesday against Arkansas Pine Bluff in game number 8. That's the fastest they've ever been to 100 runs as a program. 100 runs in their first 8 games. Each of the last 2 seasons, they did it in Game 14. So they're about a week and a half, maybe even 2 weeks ahead of their previous schedule, which also featured some big wins in the early season for Carrick Jackson and company. So things are pointed in the right direction out at Taylor Stadium and Simmons Field, and this will be a very solid test this weekend against a team that will not be a pushover to try to get the job done.
That's all really insightful analysis, and I really appreciate that. I need to hear the story about how you had to change fields in the middle of a game in Fort Myers, though.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, so the full story is we're broadcasting from historic Terry Park. The amenities are there is an old wooden grandstand behind you. Those are the amenities. And this is a field in which Babe Ruth had played, and the same orientation is there. So 81 Hall of Famers had played on this field as members of spring training ball, right? So there's a lot of history and cool for that reason. In fact, I heard, I think from Bryson LeBlanc, the Tigers' assistant coach and hitting coach, that those benches, he was told, were original benches in terms of the wood you were sitting on was the wood that some of the greats, all that cool stuff for those participants involved. So anyways, we get into Saturday's game against the University of New Haven, and in about the second inning, we lose our connection back to the studio. And I'm wondering, this hasn't happened all weekend long. We have a solution to make that very secure. Why has this happened? But we get it back, and we go throughout the game, and the sun's starting to set. It's getting to the late afternoon and evening down in Fort Myers, Florida, and it's about the fifth inning that it's getting really twilighty. Like, you're starting to see the shutter close and things getting pretty dark. But you're not supposed to turn the lights on at a baseball venue until the top of an inning. Why? So both teams have an equal opportunity to hit the same way under the lights. Well, we get to the end of the fifth inning, and the home plate umpire, looks at both dugouts and is like, are we done here? What we did not realize is that what must have knocked us off the air in the second inning was, and this was described to me by people who saw it, a bird flew into either a light standard or a transformer and exploded was the word that was used. The bird exploded. And so the lights at the field would not turn on. They would not. In fact, for the neighborhood out beyond right field, there were no lights either. Like, there was some sort of problem with the electrical grid because a bird flew into something and, I quote from an eyewitness, exploded.
It's a block-wide Randy Johnson situation.
Yes,
for that
it
bird.
is.
Got it, okay.
Now, somehow our power inside the seating bowl did not go away, which was fortunate, and the power to the lights on the field behind us was active. They had turned on those lights long before. And so we look around and look to the coaches and look to the home plate umpire, and I very quickly realized they're going to continue playing this game on a different field about 75 feet that away. And so that's what they do. They take 10 minutes, they get their portable pitch clock that they had there, and they tell everybody we're going to go over here. And I, myself, am in a scramble because myself and Tex Little need a place to sit. There's a picnic table right behind home plate that I know is there. Someone is going to want to sit there. They cannot sit there. We need it. Brock Busick, the sports information director, needs it. So I'm running and trying to claim this table with my hat. I'm coming back, and fortunately, some fans, I believe Brady Kellenbrink's family actually saw that we were struggling and said, what can we do to help? So we had some Mizzou fans, Kellenbrinks, thank you very much, actually come, and we took all the stuff from our table except for the stuff that Tex needed to continue calling the game. And I set him up with that and said, go over there and do it. And then we picked up an entire table and moved it 75 feet to the other field, the whole shooting match, the Walmart table. And needless to say, Tex did not miss a pitch. We were able to be somehow miraculously on the air. It was a first for everyone. And we finished out the broadcast basically sitting underneath field level, kind of looking up at where everyone was by about, a couple of feet. So it was a different perspective at the end of that game. It rained a little bit on Sunday, and we had some help from folks, too, just to kind of drag ourselves back further under the canopy. That was a little bit fun. But Saturday is one that doesn't happen, very often. We were just on the main concourse there, and it was, we have to leave. And we left, and somehow we got it done.
Love it. Thank you for sharing. That was excellent story time.
The bird exploded. I wish I had seen it myself. It was described as having exploded.
It does kind of put us against the clock here for the other sports. You want to just zip through
Sure,
these
we'll
real quick? Wrestling, Big 12 championships are coming up next weekend, the 6th and the 7th in Tulsa. The Big 12 pre-allocations for the NCAA tournament were announced this week, so the Tigers know what they have to do to make the big tournament in a few weeks. 9 Mizzou wrestlers are ranked, headlined by Aiden Sinclair, who is number 2 at 184, but the Big 12 tournament, Matt's going to be really, really critical.
Well, I would like to break it down this way and say you've got a bunch of guys hanging around the lower 20s in their allocation. That's very bubbly when it comes to at-large. So just do it this way. If every single Missouri Tiger finds his way into a third-place match in Tulsa, every single Missouri Tiger will be in the NCAA tournament. The lowest allocation is at 165 pounds, which is 4. Max Mayfield, you've got your work cut out for you, but that's the bare minimum, right? Make it to a third-place round on the backside, you're in. And if the Tigers can do that, they'll give themselves the opportunity to catch lightning in a bottle and shock some people at the NCAA championships. They have wrestled better as of late, and I'm excited to see what they can do.
Yeah, that's coming up. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in next week's pod and maybe the pod after that especially. Swim and Dive hosting the Mizzou qualifier on Saturday and Sunday. Both men's and women's teams finished 10th at the SEC tournament last week in Knoxville. Track and field is in the SEC Indoor Championships as we speak. That's at Texas A&M this season. Women's tennis hosting 10th-ranked Texas as we record on Friday afternoon, and then they're hosting number 5 Texas A&M and Lindenwood coming up on Sunday. Men's golf in the Colleton River Collegiate in Bluffton, South Carolina, Sunday and Monday.
Monica Wanjiku, by the way, 5th place in the 5K on Thursday at the SEC, so congratulations to Monica. Mizzou Gymnastics will have their finale at home on Sunday at 1, and considering the forecast, it's probably a good day to be indoors, although you might like to be out of doors at some of the places. Remember that if you have a ticket to any home event on Sunday, you can get into any other home event on Sunday, so whether it be gymnastics or tennis or you name it, that's a very cool thing as well. And for Mizzou Gymnastics, by the way, I see this as a real opportunity against Arkansas, not just on Senior Day, but now you're starting to bump up the NQS, the National Qualifying Score. If you're trying to get to a place where maybe, just maybe, you can find a way to host something at Mizzou Arena, you're going to have to start posting some scores. And it's not just about the head-to-head. They've put up recently their 197.55, which is the best they've had this season. Can you get to the 197.6s and 7s? Can you flirt with a 198? I know that it's potentially in the can. In fact, if you go to Road to Nationals, they have, if every single athlete posted her best score in an event, what would be your top score? And if every single Mizzou athlete in a 5-down lineup posted her best score, Missouri would be at like a 198.4, which is awfully good. Let's see you string more of those bests together in a single outing and put numbers out there that then move you up those rankings and get you closer to where you want to be.
I want to remind you again, Matt pointed out the one ticket for everything on Sunday. Gymnastics will be at the Hearn Center for Senior Day Sunday at 1,
true.
And Mizzou women's basketball will have its Senior Day against Oklahoma on Sunday at 3 o'clock. So a lot of good stuff indoors if the weather does take a turn like it's supposed to.
In fact, you can do that double really easily. You could go to gymnastics and it'll be about done before you go to women's basketball. So a lot happening, a lot certainly to come, and much to share with you as we get into the spring season. I'm glad you asked me about my travails. I knew we'd talk about it, but I kind of, a lot has happened since then, so it kind of went to the back of my mind.
Sounded like a lovely tale, and I'm glad you were able to share it.
Well, it was no tale no longer for the poor fowl who disrupted the proceedings. Added to the lore of Terry Park in Fort Myers, Florida. It did. It exploded. Steve Sowers just can't get over the fact that it exploded, but it did, and Steve is here to help us. We're glad that you ate lunch while we were doing this, Steve. Thank you very much for your efforts, as always. Thanks as well to Brad Tregnago and to you for listening. I'm Matt Michaels, and we'll talk to you next time right here on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast.